Well, thank you for being here. This is the Catholic Frequency Book Club. This is the second book we're reading, and it's very different than the first one, but I think it's going to be very, very spiritually rewarding. And I wanted to invite you, if you read the book or maybe just read the first chapter, feel free to send a mic request, and we'll go around the horn in a little bit. I know Rob ordered the book and read it. I know Lisa Marie read it. Raphael, I think, has read the book before as well. Who is Robert Cardinal Sarah? He is a guy that was from the country of Guinea on the continent of Africa. He was appointed not just a bishop, but the archbishop of this town in Guinea at the age of 34. That is incredibly young to be a bishop, much less an archbishop. Pope John Paul II is the one who appointed him to that, and he used to call him the baby bishop. Of course, today he's over 80 years old and one of the oldest bishops in the world. He's a man of incredible wisdom. He spent a great deal of his time in Rome. He was the head of this thing called Cor Unum, which is used to be what the popes, that's Latin for one heart. It was how the popes would raise money for charitable concerns. And as president of Cor Unum, he actually interacted with some people that I ended up working with because I work for a Catholic nonprofit. And he came and visited them about a decade ago in South Florida. And this was wonderful because what this meant was in 2023, when I went to Rome for the first time with some of these people, there was, I think, 5 of us. We went to his apartment in Rome, which is just steps away from St. Peter's Square. And I got to spend an hour sitting in his Rome apartment, just listening to him talk. And they had a wonderful conversation about spiritual things. Actually, was taking pictures and videos and stuff. I really haven't ever posted those because I didn't really think it was appropriate to go into someone's home and be taking pictures and stuff. But I've shared that from time to time with people. And I had a little interaction with him one-on-one, but to be honest, not too much. But he did give me a copy of one of his books. He did the sign of the cross on my forehead. And I can just say that he is an incredibly holy man. If you've ever been around somebody that just has a gentle spirit, you can just tell you're in the presence of someone who's really, really good, just an amazing person. And Cardinal Sarah, many people wanted him to be the Pope. And there was really not much chance that was going to happen based on the makeup of the College of Cardinals this last time. But he is a man who loves to write, loves to think about, the family, Western civilization. He's talked a lot about the dangers of mass migration. But the story of how this book comes to be, and this book came out, I think, in 2017. So won't be long before it'll be a decade. But what happened was he, somewhere around 2014 or so, he went to this abbey in France, this monastery, and he met one of the brothers at the monastery, Brother Vincent, who had multiple sclerosis, was a young guy, paralyzed, and he couldn't speak. The disease had already taken away his ability to speak. And they met, I think it was in October of 2014. And meeting this guy left a real impression on the cardinal. He saw him as being someone very close to God. And he was just struck by the silence. Of course, the people at the monastery were taking the cardinal around and took him to see this brother that we're all having to care for, different people in the monastery, around the clock, basically. And the cardinal was struck by his silence, the beauty of his smile. And Brother Vincent couldn't say anything. He just looked at the cardinal. But there was something about his eyes, and so it struck Cardinal Sarah. And he would go back to this monastery many times to see his friend. Every time he went, he was worse. And there was always silence. Think about this. This is two people that became really good friends, and they never had a conversation out loud. Sometimes from Rome, Cardinal Sarah would call and have them, put the guy on the line or hold the phone up to him, and the cardinal would speak to him. And of course, Brother Vincent couldn't say anything back. Silence. So this is a friendship born in silence. And it got the cardinal to just sort of thinking about this whole idea of silence, something that the world eschews, that is criticized in many ways. But this book, what we're going to be talking about, doesn't exist without that monk who has since died, Brother Vincent, with his multiple sclerosis condition. Showed us that, one of life's mysteries, why do people suffer, and the fruits that often can come out of that, if not for that person, for other people. But before I go any further, I know there's a few people with the microphone. I wanted to see if anybody wanted to say anything, or like, why did you want to dig in and take a stab at this book, Lisa Marie?
Well, I will admit I'm about halfway through the first chapter, but I wanted to read it because, as you've mentioned before many times, we live in a noisy world, and I'm being drawn more and more to an environment of silence. A long car drive, I usually listen to a podcast or music, and more I find myself wanting to sit in silence to try and calm my mind. So that's what drew me in to read the book. But it's very interesting because it's not exactly what I thought it would be, and it's still good.
And that's why we do the book club. It's to sort of push us to, including me, to when, of course, I've heard this before, but it's been a long time, and it pushes us to read it. Right? I was still reading it. I was still reading it today because we were going to do this book club. So the whole idea of the book club is to kind of be a great way to kind of, on a regular basis, keep us having a goal. And that's okay, even if people here who haven't read it at all. Totally cool. What we usually do in these book studies is do one chapter a week. But this book, as Lisa Marie mentioned, is a little different than she said. Is sort of structured as a conversation. We'll talk about that in a second. But Rob, did you want to say anything? Because I know you asked me about this book about a week ago.
Well, I wanted to read it because having read many management books, they often deal with communication, and communication, the best way we communicate is by listening and not saying anything. And sometimes not saying anything speaks volumes. And with this book, I wanted to do it just for, kind of like the art of introspection into yourself and our own personal relationship with God. That's really what I wanted to read this about. And that's what I think for me, the chapter 1 hit some very powerful things in here. If we discuss them later, if you hit on them, I'll do some commentary as well on it. Okay.
Perfect. How about you, Raphael? Have you read it yet?
Well, I've been reading it quite a bit. I'll say this. One of the reasons to read the book, and of course, I've already read it. I had quotes from the Drought on X many times from the book, so I have a bit of familiarity with it already. But I was reading it. It's quite telling because one of the things I love to do, especially after service or mass, is just to simply just be, I always have to be around people, but just simply just want some alone time to myself and not say much of anything to anybody because I get drained out from doing what I do, and I just simply just wanted to be kind of just be myself and not say much to anybody for that moment. But of course, people just don't know that's actually considered I just want some silence. I just want some silence after all that. I'm not, and that's one of the things Russia still can't seem to understand that. No matter how many times I do this, I never told him why I do it. I was hoping to maybe not say much of anything to prove a point, but of course they just keep on insisting it. They just don't get it, and I wish maybe this is help me some better ways to figure out to embrace the silence better, but also at the same time try not to let my parishioners try to distract me a million times. I'm trying to have at least have my peace for a little while, since unfortunately I do get rather drained out from so much mental concentration of any sort I do.
Thank you. One of my first big introductions to this idea of silence came not long after I became Catholic. So I'm a convert from the year of our Lord 2009. So it's been a while. Been around the block a few times, but I think it was 2010 or maybe somewhere just not long after, maybe within the first year, I went on this retreat. And it was at a monastery, or might have been a convent. I think it was a convent up in Connecticut. I'd never been to Connecticut, but I flew into LaGuardia, rented a car. It was in the wintertime. It was cold. And anyway, I arrived later than everybody else. The whole place was sort of shut down. So the next morning, I woke up and I was told that there was silence. And what would happen was they had what they called grand silence at this particular convent, starting at 9:00, and there was no talking after 9 p.m. until lunchtime the next day. Now, I was there for a conference, right, a retreat. So obviously when we went to sessions that morning, there were, but you weren't supposed to talk in the hallways or at breakfast or after 9 p.m. And that was the first sort of, I guess I would call it real structured silence. It wasn't just like you were in a room or you were at a funeral and it was like, shh. It was like, this was, nowhere. You weren't supposed to be talking, anywhere on your phone. And it just sort of struck me that how crucial that was to sort of be able to quiet the mind. I wish you could see my desk. I have my iPad. I have my phone on a little stand. I have all these notes, and there's sort of so many things in this sort of jumbled preparation that I hope I remember to sort of get to it all. But I wanted to start at this point, just mention a few Bible verses. What does the Bible say about silence? Does it say anything about silence? In the Psalms, for God alone my soul in silence waits. Also in the Psalms, to you, O God, silence is praise. I can never pronounce this book. Habakkuk. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. In Revelation, when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for half an hour. That's interesting. Zephaniah, be silent before the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. The book of Isaiah, in returning in rest you shall be saved, in quietness and in trust shall be your strength. From Lamentations, it is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. In the morning, while it was still very dark, Jesus got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. In silence, of course. Psalms 46:10, be still and know that I am God. There's many other, of course, verses throughout Scripture. What about when Jesus is silent before those condemning him? They command an answer and he doesn't give it. You can say a lot by saying nothing. The Bible is also full of warnings against things we say, right? Jesus makes a comment about if you call someone a fool, you're in danger of hell. There's a verse from Proverbs that the power of life and death is in the tongue. We're supposed to think before we speak. The Bible also talks about of all the passions we have to control, the hardest one to control is the tongue, right? Is to not say something we want to say. And so I think this book is a very helpful reminder about the beauty of silence. And if we're trying to pursue God, that when we want to, and we go through life where we are doing that various degrees of effort, sometimes we get away from that pursuit totally, but when we want to pick that up again or go as far as we can, we start with silence. In the monasteries, in the divine office, the liturgy of the hours, there's a lot of prayers at night, well in the morning before the sun comes up. There's a quote here in the introduction to this from Isaac the Syrian. Prayer offered up at night possesses a great power, more than prayer of the daytime. Therefore, all the righteous pray during the night, while combating the heaviness of the body and the sweetness of sleep. There's nothing that even Satan fears so much as prayer that is offered during the vigilance of the night. So that's interesting. I used to always love to stay up really late at night, and because it was quiet, right? Once people stopped calling, and once, of course, in the old days, back when I was a kid, before we had cable television, this is when we all walked uphill in the snow to go to school, right? Before cable television, there were 3 stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and their local affiliates. And the news would come on at 11 o'clock, and Johnny Carson would come on, and something else after that. And they'd play the national anthem, and they would sign off the air. And you'd have like this static on the little TV. Believe me, they were all small. And then you were plunged into silence. Right now, of course, we have TV 24 hours a day, hundreds of channels, all kind of stuff going on. But there was a silence that's, I think, been lost through technology. And we, especially of all these wonderful devices that we have, right? Because these wonderful devices and this technology, we're having this conversation now focused on something spiritual. But something's definitely been lost about getting away from it all. I've often said, like for kids growing up in the 80s, you'd go off during the day in the summertime and you're out of school, and you wouldn't see your parents, and they wouldn't necessarily ask where you were going, and there was no phones. In a sense, you were off on your own. It wasn't necessarily silent per se, but there is no getting away from anybody today, right? We have our phones. If we go into outer space, people can still call us. We're in this rapid, intense, constant age of communication. And there's so many blessings, so many wonderful things. People ask for prayer requests all the time. We're praying the rosary. Today, somebody joined us for the first time in the morning rosary from India. So we have these wonderful devices, and great things can come from them. But something's lost. And so to be Christian is to be a rebel, right? We're the barbarians at the gate, because the world is controlled basically by the devil, and the world is secular, and the world is not admonishing us or showing us the way to heaven. You have to fight against the world, be countercultural. So we are the barbarians, and so we have to carve out silence. And Cardinal Sarah in this book talks about it. It is very, very, very hard. Cardinal Sarah in the introduction, just some of the intro, talks about one of the things that come from, and maybe we'll do this at the end, the litany of humility, but humility is a fruit of silence. If you ever talk to somebody or you know somebody and they always have to have the last word, That's not a sign of humility. I have a friend who says, has this little phrase, arrogance is never a sign of holiness. People who have to constantly be talking and sharing what they know, and, oh, I know that, and let me tell you this, and this silence is totally in opposition to the world. Romano Guardini is a Catholic priest, philosopher, and theologian. He basically lived in the 20th century. He was born in the late 1800s, but he died in 1968. I'll give you one of his quotes. This opens chapter 1. The greatest things are accomplished in silence, not in the clamor and display of superficial eventfulness, but in the deep clarity of inner vision, in the almost imperceptible start of decision, in quiet overcoming and hidden sacrifice. Spiritual conception happens when the heart is quickened by love and the free will stirs to action. The silent forces are the strong forces. Let us turn now to the stillest event of all. Stillest because it came from the remoteness beyond the noise of any possible intrusion from God. And this book, chapter 1, opens, and again, this book is partially structured as a conversation between this French journalist and Nicolas Diat and Cardinal Sarah. And Nicolas, collaborated with the Cardinal on this book. So a lot of this book is based on their conversations about this. Imagine being able to talk to Cardinal Sarah about these great things. How many times do we say a prayer and we'd love for God to answer us, to tell us what's going to happen? For the most part, we pray, and what do we have in return? Silence. And faith is born out of that silence. And we can look at different things in our life and see that prayers were answered. And again, a prayer answered is not a yes from God. Sometimes it's a no or a not yet. It's yes, no, or not yet. But very few people have visions or hear the voice from heaven, or see a burning bush, or have St. Michael step into time and make a pronunciation, an enunciation of some kind or another. Most of us, the relationship with God is through silence. There's a quote in here in the book from a priest. God speaks in silence, and silence alone seems able to express him. For the spiritual person who has known the touch of God, silence and God seem to be identified. And so to find God again, where would he go? If not to the most silent depths of his soul, into those regions that are so hidden that nothing can no longer disturb them. When Lisa Marie was talking about being in the car and listening to podcasts and whatever, I too have found myself lately, many times, not all the time, just not having anything on, just silence. Now, you're driving down the street, it's not that silent, but you know what I mean. This need we have to fill the soundtrack of our life with noise constantly. We think about sometimes introverts and extroverts. Extroverts are outgoing, they're talking. I think extroverts have more harder time cultivating silence. Introverts, I think it's easier. But silence is sort of this meeting place. We think about in the Bible, Jesus goes out to pray. He goes out to find silent places, right? The Garden of Gethsemane is silent. It's not noisy. We see the great prophets Silence. John the Baptist is out in the desert. Moses sees this burning bush out there, basically in a quiet place. So silence is part of the path to grow in holiness. It's something we have to cultivate. And it's very, 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 very difficult. This is one of the quotes. What I was just sort of touching on there, that from the book, no prophet ever encountered God without withdrawing into solitude and silence. Moses, Elijah, John the Baptist encountered God in the great silence of the desert. Today, too, the monks seek God in solitude and silence. Not just about geographic solitude, but an interior state. People that haven't prayed the rosary, that sort of come to it, sometimes have this. Well, let me step back and give a quote, sort of something somebody told me one time, where before I was Catholic, I said something about, why do you pray the rosary instead of praying to God or something? And they said something very interesting. They said, the rosary is the beginning of prayer, not the end. And that the quieting of the mind that happens, sort of the repetition. Fulton Sheen talked about this when he talked about the rosary, that they found out with victims in World War I, they would actually teach them sometimes knitting, that as they recovered, the moving of their fingers and just sort of this had this sort of a effect, this not just physical effect, but greater than that. And that the whole thing he would talk about was the moving the fingers over the beads helps to bring us to a place of contemplation, which the rosary is about contemplation. But the powers of this world do not like silence. Turn on the MTV Awards. See what you if you hear any silence in that, you're going to see all these performance, any music video, right? You're going to see all this, explosions and all this terrible music. Music used to be the symphony, right? The opera. There's never been a stabbing at the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. There's been a lot of violence at rap music awards and stuff. There's something about the sound that affects people. A lot of people would say that music, in a sense, is a hypnosis, right? The lyrics, the music focuses us on something, focuses us on an idea, a feeling, and sort of the repetition. And people are kind of just like lulled into this state, and the moral collapse of the West, which begins not just in the 60s, but a couple of centuries ago, the beginnings of it, but really with this accelerant in the 60s, the beginning of the sexual revolution, people like Kate Millett, who were the authors of that, and the music, the movies, and the culture, all of this stuff. We wouldn't have fallen so far as a society without the technology we have. And it's often the case with the invention of technology is it can be used for good or evil, right? A car, you can have a job and use a car to feed your family. Have a job. You can also be drunk and get a DUI and kill somebody on the way home, right? So any technology, you can use a gun to protect your family or do something terrible, as we saw today. So technology can be used for good or evil. And so many things about technology in the modern world have made our lives better. The dishwasher, the washing machine, the radio, the TV, but they all make noise, right? They all, maybe they save us time, like the appliances, right? They might save us time, but what do we do with the rest of that time? Are we quiet, or are we filling that in front of the TV and just this noise? Cardinal Sarah in this book later will talk about that the Christian home should be a silent home. When there's noise, a ruckus, it's hard to sort of get really spiritual in a noise. We also see in sort of how would you even say it, the liturgy wars. I didn't want to use that word, wars, but the one of the things that attracts people to the beauty of the Latin Mass is there's a lot of silence, and the newer Mass from the 1960s, there's less silence, and so Cardinal Sarah is a big advocate of the Latin Mass. One of the reasons he's probably not Pope is at some point in the last 20 years, he said every Mass in the world should be ad orientem, which means facing, away from the people. And, the other cardinals wouldn't have gone for that. So that might be one reason he wasn't elected. But, the people who shape the world, who control the culture, they don't want silence. It's loud. Everything is loud. You think about in the Mass, the transubstantiation of the bread and the wine occurs, or should be occurring, at the utmost sacred silence, right? You'll hear the bell ring. Think about if you're at the beach. Isn't it most relaxing if there's just sort of silence, right? You can hear the waves and maybe a seagull, but when people come next to you with a chair and they bring the radio and they start playing, all that nonsense, it's not quite the divine scene anymore. Silence in the book, in chapter 1, Cardinal says, is not an absence, but I think our culture sees it that way. That silence is boring. That silence is, you're unfriendly. You didn't talk to me. You're unfriendly. The quote here from the book, I would give you the page number, but I'm on the Kindle version, so I don't think it's the same page. If you have the printed book, silence is the manifestation of a presence, the most intense of all presences. But in the world, there's something wrong with you if you're quiet. God is the friend of silence. Quoting Cardinal Sarah, see how nature, trees, flowers, grass grows in silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. Actually, that was a quote. He was quoting St. Teresa of Calcutta. That's from her book, one of her books that she wrote. So, Leona, welcome.
Hello. Sorry for being late.
There's a late fee. We'll call it later.
So I've only read like half of the first chapter so far. And what really strikes me in the very beginning is a lot of this is about the heart. And, just little lines are like paragraph 2. At the heart of man, there is an innate silence, for God abides in the innermost part of every person. And there is no place on earth where God is more present than in the human heart. This heart truly is God's abode, the temple of silence. And there's a couple more. And it actually reminded me of Revelations of St. Bridget. There was one part in there where Jesus is saying that he wants to live in the heart, that the whole universe cannot contain him, but yet he wants to live in our heart. And in our heart is where we speak to God, in the silence of our heart. And even if it's like, even if there's like turbulence, or, if there's any kind of bad situation or anything, like in our heart, like we can be silent with God there. And yeah, so like when we talk to God within ourselves, it is silence, but yet it's not, because we hear ourselves. We hear, it's hard to explain. Like even talking to God, it'd be pure silent. Like if I was standing next to you, you wouldn't know I was talking to God, but inside, interiorly, I would be. So there's that with silence there, but yet God is in our soul. So there's an interior recollection there. And
yeah, while
so
you're looking,
that's what sticks out to me. Sorry.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. Like when I became Catholic, I think that's one of the things that drew me to the church was when you go into a Catholic church, it's quiet, or it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be quiet. I've been in many non-Catholic churches, and it's not quiet, right? The louder, the hey, how you doing? The music, all, and I'm sure there's some good aspects of all of that. But, church is not supposed to be a social club. In my former parish in Florida, it was very much a social club. I would always try to get, because I worked at the church a little bit and was in charge of some, sacristan, in charge of some liturgies and stuff. And people just all come in and, hey, good to see you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is not, supposed to be a social club. You can, after Mass, sure, out front, but, people forget that it's supposed to be silent. But even people in the church, even me sometimes, all of us sometimes, I think, are uncomfortable with silence, especially if we have to face something we don't want to face. That's when we really want to fill up. Let's turn that radio on. Let's try to keep our minds off of it. Thomas Merton, 20th century priest, called noise a sin. We'll do some quotes from some of his writings in just a few minutes. But Leona, back to you.
I also wanted to mention that it made me think about Saint Joseph. Like I feel like this closeness with him, because he never speaks, like in the Bible, like there's no actual words, and yet he's so profound in all of his actions, and they speak louder than words, right? Because of how, it just like exemplified his holiness because of his silence. So I just found that as an added attribute there.
Rob, you've been silent. Do you want to chime in anything?
Well, I think, for me, the first chapter, I often had asked myself, like, how do I speak to God? Do I just pray? Is that all I'm supposed to do? Do I go to adoration and do I do another rosary, or what do I do? And how do I live a Catholic life? And one of the things on page 28, and if you have the book on number 15, the more we are clothed in glory and honors, the more we are raised in dignity, the more we are invested with public responsibilities, prestige, and temporal offices, whether as a layman, priest, or bishop. And it goes on. And I felt that for me, that was like really powerful, that, we can quickly fall into mediocrity and concern for worldly success. I think sometimes the noise of the world, whether it's external or internal, we just we become so focused on ourselves and we lose our humility and we just become so focused on success, and we only speak to God when we ask him, like, hey, can you help me get this promotion, or when we want something. So I think, that the first chapter, the silence of getting that relationship with God, is truly something that really hits home. Like you said, you walk into the church, it's supposed to be silent. When you go to adoration, it's supposed to be silent. And with silence, there is some feeling of power and awe. You are in the presence of God, and we are showing respect, and we're trying to fine-tune our relationship with him.
I wanted to welcome G. Aries, if I'm saying that right, to the stage. You requested the microphone. How you doing? And thank you, Rob, for those wonderful observations. G. Aries. Okay, we'll come back. Lisa Marie, how about you? Any other further thoughts as we continue to talk about this?
You read my mind. I was just going to raise my hand. What seemed to speak to me here initially was on page 33. Without silence, there is neither rest, nor serenity, nor interior life. And that's becoming more and more complicated or challenging in such a noisy world we live in. And I guess it just speaks to me. And if I feel like I'm getting more and more past living in this world instead of for the forever world with God, that I'm wanting to seek out more and more silence to clear my mind, or to keep it from being distracted from all these noises.
In his work, The Sign of Jonas, Thomas Merton writes, those who love God should attempt to preserve or create an atmosphere in which he can be found. Christians should have quiet homes. Throw out television if necessary. Not everybody, but those who take this sort of thing seriously. Let those who can stand a little silence find other people who like silence. That's what we're doing here. We're unsilently talking about our love of silence. Try to bring up your kids not to yell so much. Provide people in your home with places they can go to be quiet. Also, he talks about, how wonderful it is. In the past, I'm sure they have it today, but, things like a reading room, right? Hermitages, are wonderful. You can go to certain monasteries and convents today, and they might have silent retreats. We have to seek out silence, though. There's not going to be a knock at the door, and you open it and, hey, it's silence. I'm here to bring you some silence. No, the world is going to be bringing you noise. The subtitle of this book is Against the Dictatorship of Noise. What an interesting word, a dictatorship. You aren't given choices in a dictatorship. And that's what the world does with sound, right? There is a dictatorship of noise everywhere you go. When we can cultivate this interior silence, it really does help us. Helps us tame our passions and desires. Helps us be less judgmental. Again, we talked about earlier, the person that has to have the last word, that has to tell you how it is. They're so focused on their ideas and that you should accept them. Well, let me tell you. If we can cultivate interior silence in our homes, and again, if you haven't done it, it's hard. But what we do is we learn to have it at home. Then it becomes easier to take it with us into the world, like Leona was talking about, and to pray anywhere. It's another quote here that charity, one of the theological virtues that we're all supposed to strive towards, charity is born of silence. Silence is a condition for otherness. Silence is necessary for us to understand ourselves. Without silence, there's neither rest, nor serenity, nor an interior life. Silence is friendship and love, interior harmony and peace. Silence and peace have one and the same heartbeat. I could just read this book and not say anything. I find his book to be full of so many pearls of wisdom. How is even one moment of prayer, Cardinal Sarah writes, one moment of prayer life imaginable apart from silence? Noise does something to us. I've found that the older I get, the more I don't like, noise. I guess I'm going to be one of these people saying, get off my lawn at some point. But, and I've talked about this before in spaces. We've talked about this book. We've never done a space on this book or talked so much about it, but I've brought up anecdotes from it in various spaces and talks I've hosted. When I was younger, my grandmother worked at a department store, and my grandfather was retired, and he would drive her to work every day and pick her up every night. And I used to go, so as a kid sometimes, and so I would spend a lot of time at the mall and at a department store. And in those days, they had very soothing music was on, right? Instrumental. There used to always be in every town there was before in the late 90s, the Telecommunications Act made it possible for people to buy an unlimited number of radio stations. But before that, the FCC rule was you could only own 4 radio stations in the United States, one person or one company. So you had this great diversity of ownership. But even with that, in every town, you would find a sort of an instrumental station. And it was boring. As kids, we make fun of that, it'd just be sometimes it was supposed to be a song you'd recognize, but just sort of soft, boring, whatever. But this is what played when you went out, when you went to a jewelry store or went to, but now you go and you might as well be, at the club. There's rap music playing and it's just noisier. And I often think, is the world changed? I think it has. Or is it because I've gotten older? I have. Both things can be true, right? But I'm why does this grate on my nerves so much? But I do think it's louder for me personally. Yes, as I get older, I like noise less. But I think it's also louder, and the music's worse. If it was 80s music, okay, that'd be fine. Let's turn it up. Lisa Marie, turn that up louder. But the music today is just I wouldn't put the music today in the sewer because that would be insulting to the sewer. It's just such garbage. Noise today that society makes is so weary. It just sort of drags you down. Let's try that again. I had such trouble talking this morning on the rosary. I see I'm still having that trouble. It dehumanizes people. But modern man craves this noise, doesn't he? He's uneasy in the silence. Why is that? Why are people uneasy when it gets too quiet? Maybe it's something in themselves they don't want to face. Our society and our world has to have a permanent background noise. Here's another quote from the book. Without noise, man is feverish and lost. Noise gives him security, like a drug which he has become dependent. With its festive appearance, noise is a whirlwind that avoids facing itself. Agitation becomes a tranquilizer in an incoherent dream world. But this noise is a dangerous, deceptive medicine, a diabolical lie that helps man avoid confronting himself in his interior emptiness. The awakening will be brutal. Leona.
Yeah, I wanted to mention about that with sound. Some people, they have to have noise 24/7 because their conscience, it keeps their conscience from accusing them in a way. It sort of dulls their soul. Like I'm saying, people that like would need conversion or something. So, for example, like the TV would be on 24/7, always on the TV, always, on the phone, never silence, never any kind of personal recollection or any kind of, solitude. And I kind of feel like that in a way kind of shows the inward soul of a person when you see their outward behavior in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sound has a way of detaching us from ourselves, and silence forces us to reflect on our interior thoughts, on our interior life. Cardinal Sarah writes that the greatest mysteries of the world are born and unfold in silence. How does nature develop? In the greatest silence. A tree grows in silence. The sun rises over the earth in its splendor, and grandeur warms us in silence. What is extraordinary is always silent. In his mother's womb, an infant grows in silence. When a newborn is sleeping in his crib, his parents love to gaze at him in silence so as not to awaken him. The wonders of creation are silent. Art. How can we contemplate a painting or a sculpture? The beauty of a color. Great music is listened to in silence. Here's one of my favorite quotes from the book. It's a slam at contemporary music. It says, "Popular, tasteless music," we're talking to you, Lady Gaga, "is performed in an uproar, a pandemonium of shouting, a diabolical, exhausting commotion. It's not something one can listen to. It deafens man and makes him drunk with emptiness, confusion, and despair. We do not experience the same feelings, the same purity, the same elegance, the same elevation of mind and soul that we experience when we listen silently to Mozart, Beethoven, Berlioz, or Gregorian chant. Man enters into a sacred dimension at the threshold of purity listening to these. Music has an ability to convert souls. Music also has the ability to corrupt souls, as we can see that from the top 40. Go look up the Billboard Top 40. How many of those songs are about the cardinal virtues? 0. How many of them are about sex, drugs, and rock and roll? That's what we used to call it, but or it's modern, however you say it today, whatever the lingo is today. Pursuit of your passions. If it feels good, do it. That's the kind of the theme of almost every song, right, over the last 50 years. Cardinal Sarah talks about silence being freedom. I think St. Paul talked about this a little bit too. Peter was in jail because of his faithfulness to Jesus. St. Paul. But I think they felt free in jail. I don't think they felt like I would feel in jail, or you would feel in jail, because they had that connection. This is mentioned in chapter 1. The Carmelite rule prescribes, be careful not to indulge in a great deal of talk, for sin will not be wanting where there is much talk. Then quotes St. James, if anyone makes no mistake in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so they may obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Look at the ships also, though they are great and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So the tongue is a little member and boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is an unrighteous world among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the cycle of nature. For every kind of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue, a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, with it we curse men, who are made in the likeness of God. For the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. My brethren, this ought not to be so. So when we practice silence, we're lowering the chance we're going to sin, right? How many sins can be committed with our mouths, with our tongue? Gossip, slander, a whole host of other things, right? Scheming, entering into conspiracies, coming out, conspiring to steal from somebody or destroy their reputation. So as we think about this book, and will over the next few weeks, of silence, if we think about trying to tame our tongue, it's almost like defense, right? We have to not do something. We have to not say the wrong thing. This is something we have to do. But if we cultivate silence, we're going on offense. If we try to be more silent, we don't have to always give our opinion. We're going to lower the times we say something we shouldn't. Just talk 20% less, and we're going to perhaps sin 20% less with our tongue. Who knows? But I've mentioned this before in Spaces too. Our world celebrates extroverts, celebrates people who talk. I know that at work, when I'm in Zoom meetings, there are certain people who talk. Every single time they have an opinion. They want to tell us about, well, when I did this, and I used to work here, we did this and this and this and this. In our culture, the man who speaks, according to Cardinal Sarah, is celebrated. The silent man is like a poor beggar. People, in some ways, certainly in work scenarios, you don't have a value if you're not talking, promoting yourself. Go ahead, Leona.
When you were mentioning about holding our tongue, like don't say anything, when opportunities arise where we can abstain from saying anything, we can interiorly offer it up to Jesus because he's there and we know that he hears what we say, So you could be, you could say to Jesus within yourself, I'll refrain from saying this out of love for you, or something like that. Like I'm saying, you can offer it up as like a sacrifice, to keep from saying anything. Yeah.
There's a quote later in the chapter as we start to wrap this up. Silence is attained in silence and grows in silence, right? Maybe you have a hard time with silence. Well, try to cultivate 60 seconds, right? Maybe before you go to sleep, sit on the bed for 60 seconds and just be quiet. Don't think about anything. Don't think about what happened today or what will happen tomorrow or what you have to do or what bills you owe or what challenges you have. Just practice being silent. Mother Teresa wrote one time, Jesus taught us how to pray, and he also told us to learn from him to be meek and humble of heart. Neither of these can we do unless we know what silence is. Both humility and prayer grow from an ear, mind, and tongue that have lived in silence with God. For in the silence of the heart, God speaks. Of course, Mother Teresa was no stranger to silence. She was really a woman of silence in many ways. Another quote from this chapter, prayer is successfully being quiet. We think of prayer sometimes as our list to God, like he's our secretary. Do this, take a letter. I need this. I need a job. I need this. My knee hurts. It's like we're rattling off a list. Get my coffee. Like it's, prayer, of course, is supposed to be two ways. We're supposed to listen. He's got a list for us. There's nothing wrong with asking God for things. He's ask and it shall be given unto you, right? We're taught to pray and ask for things. But it's not a one-way communication. It's not a filibuster. We have a listening part. The Holy Spirit has a very quiet voice, a still, small voice. You have to quiet yourself to sort of tune into almost. Another quote from Isaac the Syrian, love silence above all things. We conquer the worst parts of ourselves when we can be silent. We do know that when we want to pray and ask for something, we know not to go, to the mall or the noisiest place. We know to go find somewhere quiet, to withdraw, to solitude. Our world no longer hears God because it is constantly speaking at a devastating speed and volume in order to say nothing. That might be the greatest quote from the book. It's right here in chapter 1. Modern civilization does not know how to be quiet. It holds forth an unending monologue. The Cardinal calls this a hell of noise. Too few Christians today are willing to go back inside themselves so as to look at themselves and to let God look at them. There's Cardinal Sarah. This is Cardinal Sarah quote. I insist too few are willing to confront God in silence by coming to be burned in that great face-to-face encounter. Our society has killed silence. He has an interesting sentence in this part of the book, or this chapter. In killing silence, man assassinates God. But who will help man to be quiet? His mobile phone is constantly ringing. His fingers and his mind are always busy sending messages. Developing a taste for prayer is probably the first and foremost battle of our age. The death of silence is apparent, but God will help us rediscover it. In this chapter also, there's this quote from Ecclesiastes, which I want to read. For everything there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. There's not much time for silence in the modern world, but we are the rebels. We need to carve it out in our own lives and reintroduce people. Have you ever had a meal with somebody in silence? Now we think about, if it was a first date, then that's probably awkward and not appropriate. But if it's somebody you know well, one of your friends or one of your relatives, there's something very beautiful about just being present with somebody. And I don't mean you're on their phone, they're on their phone, and you're on your phone. But I just mean there's no phones, there's nobody scrolling, nobody has their phone picked up. But you're just, sometimes you'll see this if you go out to restaurants. Usually it's an older couple, and they're just enjoying a meal. They don't have to be da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They don't have to be talking every second, filling up. I had a background in radio when I was a teenager in radio station, and they're like, you can't have any dead air. If there's dead air, then people are going to turn off the radio. They're going to change it to another station. So you had to always be filling up everything. When there was a song that was over, you had to talk until it was time for the next thing. And our culture kind of has that format, even in our individual private conversations. There's some people that I know that they never stop talking. And it's like, I just sometimes want to say, stop talking. For me, it makes me listen to them less. I've had people say, you tuned me out. And I just want to say, you think? Of course I tuned you out. You say 10,000 words a minute. I can't keep up. So sometimes when we talk too much, those around us aren't going to be listening when we say something important. If we're constantly speaking, the percentage of wise words is pretty low. If we want to be able to influence other people, we probably shouldn't be just just constantly talking and talking and talking. I've had people say, let's go on vacation together or something. And I just thought, hell no. You think I'm getting in a car with you? I just thought, you think I'm going to drive 600 miles where you're going to be talking every mile marker? You're going to be hitting 10,000. No, I'm not getting in the no way. I'm out of town. I'm going somewhere else. Can't do it. So I'm just flipping here. Persons who live in noise are like dust swept along by the wind. They are slaves of a turmoil that destroys their relationship with God. On the other hand, those who love silence and solitude walk step by step toward God. They know how to break the vicious circles of noise. I like this. Like animal tamers who manage to calm the roaring lions. Well, we've been going for 90 minutes. I know we did the rosary, which is about maybe 15 or 20. I have so many more things highlighted in chapter 1, but to sort of exercise the advice of Cardinal Sarah, we don't have to keep talking. Let me ask those on the stage if they have any final thoughts. Leona.
Yes, I do. I was thinking that the silence with God, when he speaks, I think that what we expect is actual, like, conversation, like actual words, which it could be. But when you're silent with God interiorly, in peace and sincerity, you feel love. And when you really focus on your heart and you feel that love, I think that's the conversation. Also, like, you hear God, like, there's this joy, in just feeling God's love in your heart. And, it can change at times or whatever, but to me, that's a form of conversation also. And there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot.
All right. Well, let us know if you think of it. Lisa Marie.
Much to what Leona said earlier, there was a point, page 58, a heart in silence is a melody for the heart of God. She had mentioned about many points going back to heart, and I thought that struck me.
And Raphael, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that the thing about silence is leave it an interior and exterior silence. If you can cultivate the exterior silence, just simply being silent, let's say like Eucharistic adoration, or maybe you need some time to be away from people just for a bit, just to not say much anything, but rather more of a contemplative act or meditation, then doing so can help to cultivate that interior silence as part of the interior life, which of course should be seen as a higher priority in our lives and must be focused on a lot more if we're going to help to improve that, as well as to improve ourselves as followers of Christ, and to imitate as he did when he went out to pray, to himself, away from the others, just to private prayer with God, or even Moses when he prayed to God as well.
Great, thank you. The space for next week, which will be next Wednesday, I think it's September 3rd, 7:15 p.m. We'll start with the rosary as we did this evening. Quick reminder, we have the rosary also in the morning, tomorrow morning, 7:55, as we do every weekday. I wanted to, we're going to do a couple of things. Lisa Marie, we will do that litany here as we close, but I wanted to read something from, it's at the end of chapter 1. It's a quote from a Carmelite brother. He was giving a talk at a conference. He said, reading the Desert Fathers, you would be tempted to believe that life in the desert is full of sweet conversations with God, with no other cares but a holy laziness, whose loving contemplation John of the Cross describes in his spiritual canticle. Most often, however, the hermit is confronted with the darkness of his own sinful soul. Silence and solitude are the place of a spiritual battle against his three enemies, the world, the devil, and the flesh. And the very last two sentences of chapter 1. The most difficult thing for man is to seek God in silence. It's pretty profound. The second sentence is, this silent light is not a human word, but a humble and a poor light. But Cardinal Sarah says this is the most difficult thing in life, is to seek God in silence while being part of this dictatorship of noise. Next Wednesday, we'll talk about chapter 2. So if you don't have the book yet, you can order it from Amazon. And you can, of course, get the physical book. Plenty of time to get that before next week. And you can also just do the Kindle thing, read chapter 2. You can catch up on chapters 1 and 2. At the very end of the introduction, I'm scrolling for it. I'm stalling till I get there. Is the litany of humility. And humility is the fruit of silence. And so that's our goal on this journey in the book club, is to become more humble wherever we are on that journey, and we'll all be in different places. So I'm going to just close us with the litany of humility, and Lisa Marie is going to give us the responses. So we begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. O Jesus, meek and humble of heart, make my heart like yours. From self-will,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being esteemed,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being loved,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being extolled,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being honored,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being praised,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being preferred to others,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being consulted,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire of being approved,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire to be understood,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the desire to be visited,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being despised,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of suffering rebukes,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being calumniated,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being forgotten,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being ridiculed,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being suspected,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being wronged,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being abandoned,
deliver me, O Lord.
From the fear of being refused,
deliver me, O Lord.
that others may be loved more than I,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
that others may be esteemed more than I,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
that in the opinion of the world others may increase and I may decrease,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
that others may be chosen and I set aside,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
that others may be praised and I go unnoticed,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
that others may be preferred to me in everything,
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others may become holier than I.
Provided that I may become as holy as I should.
Lord, grant me the grace to desire it. At being unknown and poor.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
At being deprived of the natural perfections of body and mind.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When people do not think of me.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they assign to me the meanest tasks.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they do not even deign to make use of me.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they never ask my opinion.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they leave me at the lowest place.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they never compliment me.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
When they blame me in season and out of season.
Lord, I want to rejoice.
Blessed are those who suffer persecution for justice's sake.
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven.